sure that, the features that Oscar is trying to pioneer are able to be done over the Lightning Network so that he doesn't have to worry about that stuff. He can just focus on building the best podcast app with Lightning, not Lightning with podcast features. And so that's kind of what I have a lot of fun doing, is basically is abstracting a lot of that stuff away to the devs so that they can just focus on building the applications and the real use cases that Lightning needs to just keep getting adopted and keep proving out the decentralized everything as much as we can ethos.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Changing the Tide. John Crabtree, your host here. Super stoked. I have TimK, aka the Bootstrap Bandit of LNPay, here on the show today, and he has helped bootstrap the podcasting 2.0 ecosystem, and so I just thought, man, gotta have him on the show. I'm excited to talk a little bit about his journey into Bitcoin and Lightning specifically, as well as the growth of the Laps ecosystem, both the one that he's a part of, but also those that he's built specifically for LNPay. Talk a little bit about podcasting 2.0 implementations and what that world is going to look like, and then diving into the freedom and prosperity that Bitcoin on Lightning can bring to individuals. With that, let's get going. Tim, welcome to the show.
What's up? Glad to be here.
Yeah, pumped to have you. And a lot of people that you have worked with, I think, have been on this show so far. So excited to finally get to meet you.
Yeah.
We're going to... Awesome. We are going to go ahead and dive into the Clark Moody dashboard here. And currently, we are at block height 730,443. The chain size is just a little over 450 gigs. We have 15,787 reachable Bitcoin nodes. And on the Lightning Network, we have 3,678.42 Bitcoin active in there, with 19,712 nodes, 84,712 channels. So a lot going on Lightning, and that is specifically what you are all about with LNPay, Tim. So can you tell us a little bit more about LNPay?
Yeah, so LNPay has been a project / it's been an evolved business that I've been working on in Lightning Network since 2019 when I first got involved. I came in from the angle of micropayments, and so I have somewhat of a unique take because I came into Bitcoin through the Lightning Network, and this was in 2019 when I was looking for solutions to micropayments on the internet. I was thinking, why are micropayments not here? What is going on? I mean, the obvious answer is, credit card companies and the middlemen, gatekeepers take too big of a cut to make it feasible. But the typical, why can't I pay, 10 cents to read an article on New York Times, stuff like that. And I was poking around, and I had touched Bitcoin a couple times, but only through shitcoining and trading. Then I found the Lightning Network and read the white paper of Lightning Network, and I was like, oh, damn. All right. And then I found Bitcoin, then the rabbit hole from there. But I started building on Lightning immediately to try and take advantage of just micropayments. And that's really what I've been obsessed with, is how things are going to change with micropayments, and all the doors that are going to be opened, and opportunities and new business models and new ways to receive and generate value when you can send a half a penny to somebody in such a non-custodial fashion. And the Bitcoin underneath, the whole Bitcoin value proposition it with that, it's like an added bonus, right? Like I would have been happy with just micropayments otherwise because of all the opportunities, but this is something truly, special with using Bitcoin.
Yeah. Was that a personal thing, or were you in the business? Were you in some sort of business situation where you needed micropayments, or was it a mixture of both?
It was just personal. I remember I was just thinking one day, I was like, man, why? Because I read Hacker News a lot, and I'm a software engineer, and I was like, man, it always sends you. There's always like a paywall link through Hacker News to something, and these are all one-off things like that are always hit paywalls. And I was like, man, I would pay 10 cents to just read this, or even a one-time thing, even if it's $1, I'd probably still pay it. And I've found though that like their user base, and this is a little bit of a digression, but the reason they don't offer micropayments or something small, which I think they could, is mainly because they don't care about readers coming from Hacker News. They care about the diehard fat tail of the people who just read Wall Street Journal and New York Times every day. They wake up and read every article, and they want those people to pay the subscription, which pays the bills. But anyway, I found that out after building the first application I built on the Lightning Network was called paywall.link, and it was a simple Lightning paywall service, kind of like Bitly, where you could create a link, give it to somebody. It would take you to almost like an interstitial, and you could pay a Lightning invoice, and it would redirect you to the destination. And that was in this era when there's a bunch of like Lightning laps coming on board, like LNTX bot, paywall.link, Microlancer, a lot of other little laps companies starting to take advantage of Lightning and the basically micropayment ecosystem, sats, sending sats instead of Bitcoin. I mean, that was really the buzz.
Yeah. Would you consider tippin.me a lap as well?
Oh yeah.
Or... Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because that had its moment in the sun, right? Yeah. Well, now, I mean, you are the lap ecosystem that you've built, and just laps in general. One of the things you wanted to talk about, I think, as we were talking offline, was just the evolution of that. So maybe that's a perfect time to just segue, coming from all the way back then to now. What has that development been like?
So it's been it's been fun to watch. So the laps like tippin.me and paywalls, and then faucets. Basically, the laps kind of are a lagging indicator of the protocol developments. So back when some of these first laps were made, key send and spontaneous payments were not even in the protocol yet. So, you couldn't do any of like the podcast and 2.0 stuff or anything like that. So it was just invoice payments, and even something like the invoice payments was somewhat restricting in terms of user, I guess, experience, which then bred the creation of things like LNURL, which opened up more doors. So I started with the paywalls, and then LNURL kind of started getting steam. Fiat Jaff and this guy Anton started pushing it. Fiat Jaff started pushing it really hard for like making it easy to withdraw from services. And I don't know if I should go into what LNURL is, but
dive in there.
Yeah. So LNURL started with solving one of the first big user experience problems with Lightning, which was in order to receive, you had to create an invoice and paste it into a service. So user to user, like if you're user to user is not bad because, you send them an address, you send them an invoice, it's kind of not that big a deal. But for like a service, if you have funds on a service, you would have to create an invoice, which is usually on your phone, and then paste it in somehow into your browser to receive money, or paste it in like on your phone to get to withdraw your funds out, which is pretty shitty experience and was preventing a lot of people from doing it. And it was hard back then. And so LNURL kind of popped up as a way to coordinate the withdrawal of funds between the wallet and the service behind the scenes. So you could scan a QR code that has on the service. So you had like 100 sats in the service. You could scan a QR code on your wallet and it would talk with the service and get your sats out. It would basically send an invoice out of band for you and then pull your sats out. And that opened up some doors too, for things like faucets, which were cool. And that's something that I really leaned into and made like a lightning faucet system, which is not really active anymore, but it was really cool. Taking advantage of, instead of withdrawals, using it to give away sats or to incentivize engagement, because you could just scan to receive. And it's another great use case of micropayments. And LNURL has since evolved into way more than just that withdrawal use case, but that's where it started. And it went into now you can pay to a static address, more or less. And there's some authentication, LNURL auth, and some other things. But yeah, so a lot of these things were, the apps followed that development. And then after LNURL came along, somewhere in there, KeySend got implemented by LND. And then you had apps like Sphinx come up to utilize those spontaneous payments. And they use it as chat, probably the biggest and most prolific user of KeySend to start. And
what's Sphinx?
Yeah,
You're saying?
Yeah, and I think Sphinx is the ones who really pushed to get that implemented by LND to spontaneous payments, so that they could start building out their app. And so once KeySend was implemented, that opened up another bunch of doors. And meanwhile, I was transitioning from the paywalls and faucets into LNPay, what it is today, which is basically the underlying structure of Lightning tools that I use to build both of those laps. I kind of productized into a system to enable other developers to take advantage of Lightning for micropayment based laps or apps. And I wanted to build something that was really easy for developers to use that don't really care about the nuts and bolts of Lightning, and kind of abstract away all of the, ins and outs of what is LNURL, how does it work? I just want to use it, right? I heard I need to use this, or spontaneous payments, KeySend. I just want to use it. I don't want to deal with like the actual specifics of, figuring out how to transport, the custom data for podcasts and stuff. So that's kind of what the long story of the evolution of LNPay, but that's what it is now. And then KeySend came, and then I added KeySend functionality pretty quickly into LNPay, because I think like that's the spontaneous payments is a pretty big game changer for the Lightning Network, because like all traditional rails, are like they pull from your credit card, and it's hard to do automatic push payments in the traditional rail. Like it doesn't really exist, it's kind of, it doesn't exist. So that was pretty big. And then Adam Curry came along and Dave Jones, and they were like, they reached out to me like, yo, we have this podcasting stuff and we want to try and monetize it this way, and you have a service here that makes it easy. Let's try and bootstrap this podcasting 2.0 movement. And that was great, because the only thing preventing something like that from happening was like a real champion like Adam to like really push the movement forward, more so than just like a bunch of devs. Like the tech was there, but it took a real champion to like really push it into motion. And so, yeah, since then, podcasting has been a pretty big part of what I've been working on by supporting a lot of the apps that are basically integrating with podcasting 2.0 outside of Breeze and Sphinx. I think most of the podcasting 2.0 apps are powered by LNPay underneath.
Yeah, I think Oscar at Fountain mentioned you in his episode. I think it was episode 11 or something like that. But he was talking about working with you, and kind of piqued my curiosity. So you've been there since the start, essentially, of podcasting 2.0.
Yep. I would say Sphinx was the first app to really integrate podcasting 2.0. And then just with the nature of Sphinx, I think it got a little bogged down with the SAT values really that were being transferred, and Sphinx was never really meant to handle that. It was more for channels, and because everyone has their own node, and there's a lot of channel management that comes with that. So they were hitting some limits there, and they were trying to basically just decentralize more off of Sphinx, and they needed some help for the developers of other apps like Curiocaster and Podfriend, Podverse, Cast-O-Matic. There's probably some other ones, Fountain, to kind of get onboarded. But these are developers that really they're podcast app devs, right? They're not Lightning devs. And they really were looking for something that was easy to onboard and get going, so they could offer podcasting 2.0 Lightning integrations for their users as soon as possible. And that's kind of my philosophy, which is like, let's just get started and let's see what we can do. And it started pretty much custodial, and the since moving in the non-custodial direction as the tech matures. But the goal is just to get it going and get the stats flowing and prove, even if it's going to work. Because the beginning, 0 users, and outside of Sphinx, it was still like up in the air on how people were going to use it, adopt it, and all that stuff. So it's come a long way now, and it's great. It's epic, actually, how much value is flowing through all this.
Yeah, thank you, because I benefit for sure from from podcasting 2.0. So it's been fun to be a part of. I think I onboarded back in November, and definitely seeing an uptick in the usage of it, which is really cool. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Maybe talk a little bit about the starting off in the custodial nature, and maybe that transition to the non-custodial that you were talking about.
Yeah, so it's been one of the biggest, I don't know, just say just challenges of the Lightning Network is how to onboard users in a way that ultimately is non-custodial, so that they can transfer value. But some of the technology to make that happen just isn't here yet. And there's other projects working on that stuff like Sensei and LDK and Greenlight from Blockstream. And that's definitely the way that the industry is trending. But in the meantime, it's been a challenge to kind of work through that. And I've kind of taken the approach of it's not we want to get usage and build the ecosystem and build the value for value network. And, we're not talking a lot of sat amounts, and, it's more or less more important to get this ball rolling. And as the tech matures, transition the best we can to the better solutions. So it's not perfect as is, but streaming a couple cents here and there, having a wallet with $10 USD streaming, and then you top it up every once in a while. I don't think that's that big a deal to be more or less custodial. I don't think it's fair to really impose Bitcoin's custody model or security model onto Lightning, onto micropayments. I think there's some disconnect there, but in the long run, we'll get there, but it's not there yet. And that's the type of stuff that we're working on at this level. Like, I'm working on it. Graham at Voltage is working on it. Like, we're working on, these solutions. Sensei, LND's working on it too. Like, so it's the long game, but this is where we're at now, and it's still working fine.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit with you. You talk about LDK and Sensei that's built on LDK. You talk about LND, C Lightning just rebranded Core Lightning. I wanted to get your thoughts on, is it a are we going to see all users kind of centralize in a way we already have, but like centralize onto one implementation? Or are we going to see multiple competing implementations that start to gain more market share or more developer share? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, ideally we see as many implementations as possible. LND has dominated pretty much, I would say, the early years. And I think C Lightning's most recent move to renaming to Core Lightning is kind of a signal that they're going to try and, maybe take some of that more seriously. And LND, in my opinion, more or less deserves that position because they're putting in the work. They treat it like a product. They talk to their customers, or their users, and they, guys like Ryan Gentry are out there like doing the biz dev to make sure that it's getting adopted and they're using it. People are using it, and the documentation's up to speed, and they've done a really good job of, pushing LND into the market. So, and their use case, they started with, it's kind of more or less a bigger, bulkier node. It's a little bit heavy to run LND, which is not really suited towards some of the, per user trend that's happening. Like Sphinx has per users have nodes and they're LND, and it's kind of showing over time that that's just not the best. Like, LND wasn't built for that. LND might be more suited towards routing nodes or stuff like that, or bigger enterprise corporate nodes, stuff like that. So as stuff like podcasting 2.0 is gaining steam, this custody problem is showing itself, and people are working to find a solution. That's where you're getting other ideas or implementations popping up, like Sensei using LDK and Greenlight coming up from Blockstream. And the rising way to solve this problem is basically key segregation or segregated signing, where the node you have can be hosted in the cloud, but the keys to the node are somewhere else. So on the phone or on your computer or on a Raspberry Pi. And when, payments go in or out, the node from the cloud reaches out to you somehow, which is not all the way, this is not like solid yet, but this is the theory, where the keys are on your phone or the service reaches out to your phone, signs, and sends back with Lightning node, signs, sends back. And that's essentially how Greenlight works, where the keys aren't in the cloud, but the node is hosted in the cloud. So yeah, I think as more of these use cases come up, purpose-built node implementations will come up to solve these problems. And that will help further kind of spreading out the implementation distribution across the network, which LND is dominating for sure right now.
And so are you saying, Tim, in that kind of key segregation situation, that those keys could work no matter the implementation that node is running on?
In theory, yeah. There might need to be some extra. Wait, no. You might be able to like move your Lightning node from implementations, but it needs to be on one at a time while it's live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's go back to LNPay too, because I mean, essentially what you're offering, Tim, with LNPay is like this service that, like you said, abstracts away many of the complexities of Lightning, specifically for people who want to bolt into Lightning that are like business owners, but they're not necessarily Lightning engineers. And it looks like from the pricing page on lnpay.co that you've pretty much set yourself up as a bit of a software as a service platform. Would you describe yourself as that?
Yeah, so there's basically the get started type tier, which is custodial for like low amounts to get started. And then you can move towards a setup, which is more of a solution setup where you have your own node and you can plug it into LNPay. So you hold the funds as the developer, but you can take advantage of all of LNPay's abstractions on top of it. And so instead of, it just works the same. It's just powered by your node. And as you get that, as like apps get bigger, they kind of move towards that model. And then, I offer like managing and kind of servicing the node for some of these developers too, to help them if they don't want to do it, like managing channels and liquidity and all that. And for some of the more complex apps that grow, there's a lot that goes into making sure payments get delivered, things are fast, the node is just node uptime and response times are pretty good, and ensuring, like setting the fee rates and stuff, and generally ensuring that payments get delivered. And my theory has been like paying the fees, like we'll pay high fees for the customer end user experience, like the listener, or a lot of sats back user companies use LNPay to make sure that their sats get delivered appropriately. So there's quite a lot that goes into making something work at scale like that. And Oscar and I've worked together a lot on that stuff as his app is growing and pushing some of the limits of key send on the network.
Yeah. That's really cool. There was one other thing you said a little bit back, and I want to bring it back to the fore, but you were talking about not imposing Bitcoin's like custody model on top of Lightning Network, specifically in terms of micropayments. I think I get what you mean. When you said that, it made me think a little bit about the idea that businesses have probably one of the biggest problems they face that I'm not sure I've seen anything yet for as a solution on the Lightning Network is like accounting. There are accounting standards for businesses. There's a whole lot of stuff that they have to do, not to mention like you want to eventually create repeat customers, right, over time, and build your business that way. Were you thinking other things too in general of like, why not to impose Bitcoin's custody model on top of micropayments?
Yeah, I've thought about this and wrestled with it a lot, because Bitcoin's, non-custodial Bitcoin is king, right? And it's obvious that's how it should be done. And I think with Lightning, I've had to think about it a lot to undo some of that thinking for Lightning. I think that the amount of money, like you have to just practice just better hygiene, I think. Like I call it custodial hygiene. It's like, don't keep a lot of money on custodial services. If you don't deposit like a lot of money into your podcast wallet, I don't even think you can. I think the app services don't even let you do that for a good reason. If you take a longer view of the way things are going, this really is an intermediate step. Like ideally you have wallets, like your wallet is hooked into Fountain and is streaming sats from your wallet, not a wallet in Fountain. Like that's the long game. And that the tech just isn't there for that. But in this intermediate stage, and who knows how long it's going to last, like I don't really see that big of a problem. It's a hot wallet, treat it as such. I think education is more important on like what that means, but nobody's storing their life savings in, a podcast wallet. So, it's kind of like, I don't think it's that big a deal, but I do think that the education about what's happening is. But yeah, it's a tough one to wrap your head around for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I don't provide financial advice on this podcast, but one thing I can say is don't store your life savings in a podcaster wallet, or a podcast wallet, I should say. But then, to your point though. Oh, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, there's trade-offs, right? There's trade-offs with everything. And at this point, I think the trade-off for the greater network to grow, like if we took that threat model of Bitcoin and non-custodial, then podcasting 2.0 wouldn't exist right now. If it only worked non-custodially,
Mm-hmm.
So taking some of the risks, and the early users are willing to take the risks. And I think a lot of the users today, the listeners, they understand the risks and they know what's happening. So it's cool. Plus the education of new people as apps like Fountain and Podfriend and these guys bring in new Lightning users. The education becomes more important. But the hardcore Lightning users of today who have been using Lightning, they understand it. And I think everybody would rather see the ecosystem grow, and everybody's taking a little bit of risk in doing that for the short term, and willing to participate, contribute their time and their feedback in their actual sats in the process. So I think it's a worthy trade-off to get
it's a bit of rolling. For sure. I think it's an early investment in, like you said, trying to grow it, bootstrap it almost, to use that language. What do you think, though, Tim, what steps need to be taken to get towards that future you talk about, where someone's node is connected into a Fountain or a Podfriend, Podverse, CurioCast, or Castomatic?
Yeah, I've thought about this too. Some sort of standard, maybe. It's tough. I think there's room in the space for somebody to solve that problem. I'm not entirely sure how it would look. As the protocol level, like a lot of this is driven by the protocol level stuff. So as, maybe macaroons, LND macaroons get more sophisticated, you could have a solution that way. As Sensei comes up, they might have some better solutions to take advantage of, wallet level permissions. I think it'll be an open standard that wallets adopt that let external services use the user's funds in a particular way. LSATs from LND also maybe. It's tough. I don't think anybody's really cracked that yet. Like if you could imagine key sending from your wallet of Satoshi via Fountain or something like that. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but that's the direction I think it'll go.
Yeah. I could see potentially how, like Sensei, for instance, John John Cantrell joined me a few episodes back, and him describing the Sensei node as kind of like a parent with a lot of children, seeing that as a potential vector for connecting nodes, but maybe those children don't necessarily have to have the full capacity of a node in terms of like the network graph and that sort of thing, but they can connect in to this larger node, I guess. Tell us a little bit though, like you mentioned, you explained LNURL a little bit, LND's macaroons and kind of what they do and how that might be a potential solution.
With LNURL, I don't think as much is as relevant here. LNURL is meant for mainly.
Yeah, I meant like you explained LNURL for maybe some of the listeners who aren't as technical. What is a macaroon? Could you also explain that? Sorry about that.
Yeah. A macaroon is it's an evolution from cookie. It's like web cookies, and our macaroons are basically a cookie with more permission-based, role-based attributes to it. So you can, LND has what's called an admin macaroon that pretty much enables you to do everything. And then they have an invoice-only macaroon, which if you connect to LND with this admin macaroon, an invoice macaroon, you can only generate invoices and you're restricted from doing other services. So it's like a permissions-based, the permissions are stored in the macaroon, but it's like a permissions-based authentication method. And I think macaroons were popularized, created by Google. And a lot of the engineers at LND are from Google. So that's one way to do it. Seems to be, I think Sensei also is adopting that way, using macaroons. So C Lightning doesn't, they just have API keys. And I'm not even sure how the permissions work. Might be plugin based. There are plugins. I have to write a plugin to do the same stuff. I think C Lightning just has an API key. But yeah, you could have a macaroon that only lets you send up to 100 sats per day, right? And you could give that to, you could generate that from your node and give it to a service like Fountain, and they could only stream 100 sats per day or something like that. Also with the Sensei model is there's still this issue of channels where every node needs a channel and the appropriate liquidity to make the Lightning transactions happen, which is also, can be an issue or it's going to be a challenge to kind of figure out, and stuff on the protocol level kind of needs to happen, I think, in my opinion, to make that a reliable future. Things like channel factories where lots of nodes can open channels together to provide liquidity, stuff like that. There's been arguments against the Lightning Network scaling because of this one channel, one node thing. And I think there's still a lot of discussion to be had there. I'm not sure it's going to play out, but right now it's not that big of a problem, but it could be a problem in the future for sure. But yeah, that's something to think about too.
Yeah. It reminds me of Roy Scheinfeld of Breeze released an article, or published an article, I should say. I think it was last month, maybe late February, but it was specifically around Lightning being a liquidity network, and that's the major problem to solve. Sounds like that's kind of what you're wrestling with here. And a lot of people are, actually.
Yeah, it's a little unclear. But I think I'm bullish enough on the brain capital in the space and the implementations and the engineers that, as these things become problems, they will get solved slowly as the demand requires it, right? As if that's the way that the Lightning Network is going, solutions will be created with the best, someone might come up with some like genius way to do it on Taproot or something, using Taproot or, PTLCs or, there's a lot of innovation to be had to solve these problems. And I'm pretty confident that they will get solved. And seeing the Lightning Network grow while I've been running this custodial service for a while, it's been, payments used to fail, like $5 payments used to fail. And now they don't, like $500 payments might fail. So it's pretty crazy to just see the network slowly growing, and the problems that used to happen just don't really happen anymore. Whether that's because LND made their stuff better, or the network's liquidity got better, or profit-seeking routing nodes filled the gaps to make money but make the payments go through. It's the incentives seem to be right to where things are all growing in unison. So I'm definitely bullish on that.
Yeah, and we don't know who's even going to join on the developer side, or also by adding liquidity. For instance, like Kraken over the past 2 weeks has added something like almost 75 Bitcoin in liquidity to the network, which is a huge development. You also have, like yourself, people who came in not through Bitcoin specifically first, but Lightning. There are probably developers out there right now that have not transitioned to Lightning yet that probably will, as brain capital continues to grow in the space, as the flight from traditional legacy payment, the legacy payment system, for instance. So that'll be interesting to watch over the next few years. So since this podcast really is about Bitcoin on Lightning, leading, I think, power more and more away, let's say, from centralized authoritarian services towards more kind of individual autonomy and prosperity, a little bit more freedom compared to the legacy system. I'd love to just dive into your thoughts here. Podcasting 2.0 seems like an obvious candidate for conversation in this vein, but there's probably a lot of other things on your mind. Where do you see Bitcoin and Lightning enabling that?
Yeah, I think podcasting 2.0, it to me is like the most bullish event that's happened to Lightning, period, because it's a real world application that needed a solution, and it didn't have to be Lightning. Like, they just needed a solution. And that's what I was saying before. The champion, Adam, coming in and just leading the charge is so epic, because the wave of adoption and the tool, like everything being built in his wake, him and Dave's wake at podcastindex.org, and the standards they're setting, piggybacking off of RSS and the existing podcasting ecosystem, they're just straight up proving out the model that something decentralized like this, putting the power back into the creators so that they have a direct line to their audience and they're getting paid directly from their users, is epic. And it's working, which is even more epic. Like, you can theorize about it all you want, but it's actually working. Your podcast is here, you're getting paid, it's working, and everybody's just slowly getting on board, and it's just working. And I think it's going to set the tone set this model that they've kind of pioneered is going to set the tone for other models. Like, I think you should see this with YouTube video, right? Not more than just podcasting. take this, should go to video and take advantage of the fact that RSS is still a very viable way to, parse data, and everybody knows it, and it's still there, right? Some people have forgotten about it, but the way that podcasting works with, anybody can set up a podcast and disseminate their RSS feed, and all you have to do is really host your content somewhere. I think that could go into a lot of different verticals. Video, definitely like an obvious one. Music, like all kinds of different verticals I think will come out from this. Definitely from the creator perspective. And I've come to see that creators are going to probably be the first wave of Lightning adoption. It's like already happening, but just creators, especially creators who are getting banned from YouTube and stuff like that. Adult entertainment should be on this. If they're not, like they should definitely be on moving in this direction. So yeah, I mean, that stuff gets me so bullish, and I'm glad and so happy to be right in the middle of it with the podcasting 2.0 stuff, because it's truly crazy how well it's working.
It's amazing to think about RSS and like basically thinking about the Apple podcasting namespace, because really Apple was like the first behemoth to, as part of the iPod revolution, right? They adopted podcasting and kind of dominated the protocol. And it's really fun to watch Adam, who I think potentially introduced Apple to podcasting, or to podcasting and RSS in the first place, podcasting via RSS, I should say, and to have them retake it and start adding new tags into the namespace that I think it's going to push traditional podcasters to have to catch up to those who are just starting on podcasting with like the podcasting 2.0 features. And that's an interesting development. It's not possible without
podcasting 2.0 features. Right. Podcasting 2.0 features are growing too, which is really cool to see. And
yeah,
what do you add in? Like Oscar's adding in, led the charge on like comments over Lightning, bullish. I think you use those, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a user was listening and had a question for Keon of Stacker News. And so I just posted the question on Twitter, and he responded. I know they're thinking of like being able to respond to comments too, that would be an epic thing for podcasters to be able to do in real time.
Yeah. And that's I think the Podcast Index does live shows for theirs. They're testing out live shows where you can stream real time. And that's another whole dynamic about the podcasting 2.0 that is great to see, is the data and analytics that can be derived from payments that are streaming as close to real time as possible. It's like every minute now, but eventually it could get down to like per second. But the analytics that you can get from that are epic. Like you could see when your content is engaging, or you can see when the boosts happen, and you can kind of create a feedback loop around your content and make it better for your audience, because you'll know, because they're paying you, they're speaking with their wallet on what they like and what they don't like by not spending, right? And I always thought that podcasting would be monetized by like pay per episode as opposed to streaming. Even if it's over Lightning, pay per episode over Lightning, you could still do all of that with the same decentralized model with RSS. But the streaming makes it even better, because you like podcasting, the quality of content theoretically should get better. And the ability to take advantage of the fact that, the payment is including, because with every podcasting 2.0 payment, there's a block of data included that has, the timestamp, the episode, of if it's a boost or not, which could include a comment or something, how the sat value and some other things. But that's enough to create some pretty good analytics around how users are perceiving your content. And that's just like a product improvement that that podcasters don't have right now. Even if you're using it just doesn't exist, because the money is what really creates the value feedback loop. So expect that to come up too. It's absolutely, I know Oscar's working on that stuff to make the analytics better for podcasters, but that's going to open up a whole nother door of opportunity.
Yeah, I think it really, theoretically, I knew about it talking with Oscar offline after he came on my show. But then when I saw it happen in real time and people had actually streamed me Bitcoin, like the hardest money known that I can withdraw to my own node, or my own wallet, I should say, and I can verify that with my node, and I can see exactly when they sent that. Like a couple of these have just been comments that were like, "Whoa, this is epic! I'd never thought of that." It gives a timestamp, and so I can go back to that part of the episode. Say it happened at 38 minutes and 56 seconds, and listen to kind of that 15 seconds on either side and know exactly what hit deep for them. And that was so cool. Not to mention you can't really stop it. I guess you could, because there's Fountain is a custodial, my podcaster wallet is custodial, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, like you said, we're very early, and I don't think it's too long before we get to a point where it is unstoppable, the value stream. So
yeah,
it's fun.
And that's epic. The tools are only going to be able to get better for you to really hone in on what that value means and what those payments mean for your content. And me on the back end, so I've been working on, enabling that stuff, like making sure like emojis didn't work for a little bit, making sure emojis get streamed right over the Lightning Network, and making sure that, the features that Oscar is trying to pioneer are able to be done over the Lightning Network, so that he doesn't have to worry about that stuff. He can just focus on building the best podcast app with Lightning, not Lightning with podcast features. And so that's kind of what I have a lot of fun doing, is basically abstracting a lot of that stuff away from the devs, so that they can just focus on building the applications and the real use cases that Lightning needs to just keep getting adopted and keep proving out the decentralize everything as much as we can ethos.
Yeah, and as you work with companies like Fountain, but also other enterprise companies, I mean, at some point there are going to be legacy incumbent companies that want to adopt Lightning as a payment rail. And you've mentioned a couple of industries potentially, but have you seen, like, beyond startups like Fountain who are part of like these lightning specific ecosystems like podcasting 2.0, have you seen any incumbent, like, big companies come knocking and show interest?
The biggest companies now are more or less exchanges that want to integrate Lightning for their users. And I mean, that's great. It's not the most exciting use case, but there's still a lot of exchanges that don't have Lightning, don't know how to do it, don't really care to know how to do it, but want to do it. And so those are probably the biggest enterprise customers. and it kind of all goes in the same outsourced wallet fashion, which is basically what my product is. So it's a good fit, but it's not that exciting. Another good use case has been Sats back companies, which I like those a lot because that's kind of exciting, where you just get, just small rewards for spending. And so the payouts are done on Lightning, and it's another micropayment use case that's kind of enabled by Lightning in a better fashion.
Is that like a swap essentially? So I'll give you an example, like Fold. I'm a Fold customer. And when I do my withdrawals, they're coming on chain. I'm pretty sure they're going via Lightning, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know there are other Sats back companies like Bitcoin company that just dropped their app, and I mean there's a whole host of them. So like, will those withdrawals essentially be swaps from Lightning to on-chain or Lightning to Lightning?
Yeah, usually they'll go on-chain to Lightning if there is a swap. So like the payout in Lightning is the cool part. So I think some of them, I can't remember if Fold does withdrawals on Lightning. I can't remember. But the Bitcoin company, I think they're only Lightning right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so but the idea that the micropayment reward you can get immediately to your own wallet is cool.
Yeah. It's just this whole avenue of payments that have never been available anywhere worldwide to receive a certain amount of value instantly and almost without fee. I don't think we have even scratched the surface of like what that enables, kind of to your point earlier, like new use cases that no one's even imagined yet.
Yeah. I think about it. That's again podcasting 2.0, man. I didn't think that that's how it would happen, but that's how it happened. Like, we're waiting for something. We all were talking about it, like, oh yeah, like micropayments, like it would be so cool to fix podcasting because ads suck and the mid rolls and the pre rolls, like everyone hates that shit.
For sure.
and the podcasting 2.0 movement came along and just blew everything out of the water. And there's going to be more of those. I don't think it's easy. It's definitely not easy to predict who or how it's going to happen, but there's going to be more. And just positioning, for me as running a business, I'm just positioning myself to try and take advantage of those waves as they come. Because I don't know how they'll be. And I've kind of given up on trying to guess how it'll happen. But after seeing one big one, like the podcasting 2.0 stuff, there's definitely more. They're going to come somehow.
I love it. What are you, maybe over the next, to land the plane here, over the next 6 months to 12 months, like what are you most pumped about? Is it podcasting 2.0? I mean, you've clearly shown your excitement there. Anything else over the next 6 months to a year you're just jazzed about when it comes to Lightning?
I'm pretty excited about continuing to add features and value to the podcasting stuff for sure. I mean, that's been my biggest focus because it's growing the most. But I am excited to explore some of the new like Sensei style and remote signer stuff. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation there, and trying to figure out how LNPay can take advantage of that to offer like more cool features, and providing users of the apps with like more liquidity stuff like loop ins, loop outs, and stuff like that. I like just the nitty gritty feature stuff. That stuff's what gets me jacked. Just slowly iterating and building out value that people use. Like that's what makes me really happy. Is when people are using my stuff. So I'm just gonna keep following that path. But from big picture, yeah, the trend towards the node stuff, it'll be good to see. I'm glad that John Cantrell has decided to build a Lightning node implementation off LDK. It's only a matter of time before that happened. Now that LDK is matured enough, somebody's going to do it, and hopefully there's more node implementations like that. But yeah, from my corner of Lightning, that's the new.
It's cool. I thought of one more thing that I thought would be interesting to talk with you about before we go here. There's some, what do you call it? Just some rumbling on Twitter around, will Apple announce like that they're, integrating Bitcoin into Apple Pay and that sort of thing. My question to you is like, let's say they don't, because it's not confirmed in any way, shape, or form, but like you have Google and Samsung Pay, you have Apple Pay, you have some of these equivalents over in like Southeast Asia, like Alibaba's version and that sort of thing, Amazon Pay. Do you think we'll see any of those big ones adopt Lightning, at least on the back end, if not just like outright? And how long do you think it'll be before they do?
It would be pretty crazy if there was some truth to that rumor of striking Apple. I still think it'll be a while before that truly happens, just because the scale of the Lightning Network, I still don't think is there to support Apple user base. I'd be curious to know what the result from Twitter's tipping integration with Strike is like in terms of volume. But running a node or nodes that manage that much volume is not easy right now. Like I don't even, like at Apple's scale, I don't even think it would work. Honestly, I don't think it would work. So I still think it'll be some time.
Considering the capacity value, as I'm looking at Clark Moody's dashboard right now, is like, at least that we know of, 168.8 million. Yeah, I could see what you mean. The liquidity just not being there.
Yeah, if I was Apple, I would be like, this needs to get bigger before we try this, or we're only going to roll it out to like a small set of users or something. Like, I just don't. I think the user experience of the payments, there'd have to be like payment or like size restrictions. Like the user experience wouldn't be there. I don't think, in my opinion, to justify someone like Apple integrating it. There's still a lot of work to be done in getting that, user experience right in terms of sending payments and stuff like that for some of the higher value payment amounts. Micropayments, I think, would be okay, but they're not doing micropayment stuff. So
yeah,
that's where I stand on that. I think it would be cool. Maybe it'll be an integration, or maybe there's some truth to it in terms of maybe not straight payments, but something else, another type of Lightning integration, not necessarily like a Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, Lightning Pay fashion, but something else.
Yeah,
like tipping is a good one.
Yeah. Well, hey, Tim, thanks so much for your time today. I want to give you a chance to kind of plug away where people can find you, find your company, and yeah, plug away.
LNPay.co, Bootstrap Bandit on Twitter. Holler at me. That's pretty much it. Watch my memes. I've made some long form memes that I think are funny. They're on Twitter.
Nice.
But, yeah.
I haven't
even
seen
seen
those
yet.
yet.
Talk about Lightning. Let me know. Yeah, that's my pinned tweet. Check them out. They're funny.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
That was fantastic. His bullishness on podcasting 2.0 is so awesome. It was like a light bulb went off in his head back when he started helping Adam and Dave spin up the podcasting 2.0 ecosystem. And I saw that too theoretically, and then just seeing it specifically in my podcasting apps where people have specifically Fountain. Shout out Oscar. But seeing the comments that come in and the timestamp, the episode, and people actually able to comment at that point, and that way you can go back and check it out. And so much more to come. I mean, he talks about things that aren't even enabled yet, like being able to, stream directly, sats directly to your node through these particular apps, for instance. And so the bridge from custodial to non-custodial and where that's coming, I think is really awesome. And that's super exciting. And I think the work that he's doing at LNPay is that initial bloom of the Lightning Network into, I would say, the enterprise, almost like last session, 20 with Graham, and Voltage doing very much the same. He even called it out. But they are helping to scale Lightning for these greater and greater business use cases and abstract away the complexity of Lightning. And so they're doing it in both in their own different ways. Speaking of the work that he's done for Podcasting 2.0, one of those is the ability to receive sats in streaming or a one-time boost. And so I wanted to shout out listener on Fountain at StemR42, STEMR42. Looks like he was streaming about a little over 100 sats every 5 minutes, finished the entire episode with Graham. So thank you very much for that. Hope you enjoyed it. That was a great session. If you have any questions for Tim or you found value out of this podcast, please don't hesitate to send sats this way. That is completely 100% audience funded. Whatever value you feel like you're receiving, I would appreciate it back. I do not have any ads. As Tim just talked about, the terrible experience of mid-show interruptions and beginning roll interruptions of 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes worth of sponsors. I love a lot of companies out there, just haven't taken any money yet because I want to get straight to the point with the people that I'm talking with. I think this is just such an important tool, Lightning, for, again, enabling greater freedom and prosperity, not only in places where traditionally there has been, but potentially even more importantly, in places where it's enabling completely new lifestyles, in the sense that things that were not able to be afforded before people are getting more of their time back. And so they're able to build and create more opportunities for their communities. And so that I really feel like is the power of Lightning. And as it scales, I'm excited to see it continue. Again, if you are receiving value, please feel free to send back that value in return. It would be much appreciated. Until next time, don't do anything too crazy.